Today on the ATL box score, it is SEC Championship weekend here in Atlanta. So we are going to talk about, at the beginning of the show, the Dogs' chances of beating the Crimson Tide. Then we have Bill Bender from sportingnews.com to talk about the goings-on in college football this weekend, breaking it all down for you. And then we have Sean McEvoy, the quarterback whisperer, talking about quarterbacks and McKenzie Milton, Justin Fields, the SEC championship game, Tua Vailoga, all in this episode of the ATL Box Score podcast with Alex Berger. It is Football Friday, so enjoy. Guys, I just want to tell you the biggest secret in the Atlanta business community. And I don't know why it's such a big secret, but I use them for all my resources to get my work done to promote my brand, and they are right off of Peachtree Street in Midtown Atlanta. And if you're a small business owner, or you're trying to get your foot in the door in the Atlanta area, or you work from home, well, you need to check out Spaces Midtown East. And you're probably like, what Spaces? Well, Spaces is one of the premier brands in the co-working industry. And yes, the co-working industry has come up in the past couple of years. And I tell you, guys, I got to tell you this. If you're looking for office space, if you're looking for a place to do work and you're tired of coffee shops, you're tired of working out of your house, you need to check out Spaces Midtown. Yes, there's other attractive brands out there, and trust me, I've been part of them. Spaces is above the rest. And here to tell you more about Spaces Midtown, I actually have one of the managers there who's managed a lot of different centers, even with the Regis brand. But Steve is going to tell you more about, we have Steve Choi going to tell you more about Spaces Midtown.
Hey, Alex, thanks for that awesome introduction and that great compliment. What's great about you, Alex, is that you have truly used other providers out there, and I love that we continue to earn your business every time. Love seeing you and ATL Box Score here utilizing our space. So Space is a place where we invite people to work, meet, and connect with other like-minded individuals. We've designed our spaces to help promote creativity as well as networking and just innovative work styles. We have 8,000 square feet of collaborative space on our first floor at our Spaces Midtown East Center. And then we have about 40,000 square feet of private office space of various sizes on our second floor. So come on out, take a free test drive. If you mention Alex or ATL Box Score, we'll give you 5 days for free to come in and check it out for yourself to see what you think of Spaces.
Well, thank you, Steve. Thank you for those kind words. As always, love working with you and your friendly staff here at Spaces Midtown East. To find out more information, they are just a block north from the Fox Theater. If you've been to the Fox recently, you probably parked in their parking garage. But if you want more information, if you're interested in Spaces, I'm going to put the link to their website in the show description. Check out Spaces Midtown East. Well, now we just want to welcome you to the ATL Box Score podcast with Alex Berger. This is our first live podcast that's going to be available through Podbeam and hopefully iTunes soon. We're under review right now, so cross your fingers. If you're a fan of the show, we definitely would appreciate your prayers and everything like that. So, but It is good to be here. We are recording it from downtown Atlanta. I just want to give a special thanks to Steve Choi and to Regis for letting me record in their, what I'm going to call it, a makeshift studio. I'll just put it that way. I just want to thank the friendly folks at Regis and Steve Choi for just hooking me up for this show, which coincides with SEC Championship Weekend here in downtown Atlanta. And, you know, folks, I kind of feel like I'm that guy from Airplane, and yeah, when I mentioned that movie Airplane, I'm probably outdating a lot of people right now, but I picked a heck of a week to start a sports podcast in Atlanta because of all just the different things that are going on this weekend. What's going to go on this weekend, because just a few days ago, Paul Johnson stepped down from Georgia Tech, which is a little surprising, and is going to just enjoy what it's like he's going to enjoy life without football, pretty much. If you want to call it retiring or just stepping away, when they announced, when Tech announced it, they just pretty much said that he's stepping down. A lot of people speculate that he's retiring, and watching his press conference yesterday, it just seems like he's just kind of stepping away and seeing what life's gonna offer. And But yeah, this week has been a busy week, and that happened on Tuesday, and now we're going to have the SEC Championship game with Georgia and Alabama. So, and congratulations to Atlanta United. I was almost going to forget about that, but they pulled it off. They're not starting to become one of these stereotypical Atlanta teams. So congrats to Atlanta United for finishing strong. And now we're going to have the MLS Cup in the stadium right behind me in Mercedes-Benz Stadium. So congrats to them. I was skeptical a little bit about what they could accomplish, but I'm glad that they got it done last night. And just, yeah, like I said, I picked a heck of a week to start a sports podcast. That you had all these things going on at one time, but just to let you know, this is what we like to call Football Friday here on the ATL Box Score, and where we just focus our attention to football, no matter what time of year is. If it's March Madness, we still talk about football on Friday. And today we got a heck of a show for you. We got Bill Bender from sportingnews.com, and he's going to give us his thoughts and opinion on college football this weekend, because you got a lot of huge conference games going on right now. And then we're going to have Sean McEvoy on just to get his take on McKenzie Milton and that situation over there. Also, he's going to give his opinions and his thought process. Or we'd like to bring Sean on because Sean is a private quarterback trainer, and we just get his thoughts and opinions on different quarterback development questions. And he's going to give us a good idea what Georgia's offensive coordinator Jim Cheney has to do to be successful against the Crimson Tide. So we always like to have Sean on and to pick his brain. And football is actually a second language, and we actually call him the quarterback whisperer. So we got a full show for you, and I know that it's like if you're really into college football, you're definitely going to love this episode, because right now it always seems like when the SEC championship is here in Atlanta that the NFL just takes a back seat, and that's exactly what's going to happen today on this show. This is like I said, this is a very heavy college football conversation podcast. So thanks for joining us. I'm Alex Berger, and this is the ATL Box Score podcast with Alex Berger. Now, we touched on it briefly at the beginning of the show, and Paul Johnson stepping down at Georgia Tech was a surprise and a not surprise. I thought that Georgia Tech was possibly going to fire him after the not this year, probably in the next couple of years. But I'm glad that Paul Johnson went out the way that he could go out with dignity and respect. And I watched the whole 44 minutes of his exit press conference. Yeah. If you can sit through that, then you should probably be in this business. But I'm glad that he went out with respect. That I was suspicious at first. That I'm just like, is this a forced step down, or is this or is he actually doing this on his own? And usually, if you've been around college football, you always think that it's going to be when a change happens like this, that, and even though they say it's not a firing, because we're so used to in this industry and seeing guys just get fired at the drop of a hat if they're not competing for playoff spots or in the New Year's Six. So I thought that this was a forced resignation. But watching the press conference, it seems like Paul Johnson just wants to step away from football and just to enjoy life, just to see what life has to offer outside of football. And I respect you for doing that. And I think he is in his right, because, look, Tech is a hard school to win a championship at the highest level. Let's just be honest with each other right now. So for him to accomplish what he has accomplished at Georgia Tech, running a offense that was not popular, is hard to convince high school kids to run, he's been pretty darn successful, beating his in-state rival 3 times. So props to him, props what he has accomplished at Georgia Tech. And I'll say this as a Georgia fan, playing his team always made me wonder if how close of a game it was going to be, or if his side was gonna pull out. So so I'm glad that Paul Johnson actually got to go out the way he wanted to, and it seems like he went out on his own terms, and that this is something that he wanted to do himself. It wasn't forced on him. He talked about without Todd Stansbury, and I think this is where Todd Stansbury gets a lot of credit, because he said without him that he would have probably have done this 4 or 5 years ago. which part of me doesn't blame him because there's been so much, just so much change in that athletic director role at Georgia Tech since Paul Johnson's been there. Like, he's at least had to go through like 5 athletic directors. But now the focus and now the conversation's talking about who's going to replace him. Chad Wisenhunt is probably the most popular name that people are talking about. I don't know if that's going to be the right fit for Georgia Tech. Unless you're Pete Carroll or Nick Saban, those are the only 2 guys that really work out that have strong have somewhat NFL backgrounds, because NFL guys, especially if you have a strong NFL background, it just doesn't work out in college. So Chad Wisenhunt, Ken Wisenhunt, I don't think is going to work out, and I'll believe it when I see it. Tony Elliott is an interesting choice for me. The offensive coordinator at Clemson, I think that would be interesting. Brett Key. I don't know how thrilled you would be, even though Brent has a lot of experience at UCF, and he's the Alabama offensive line coach right now. I don't know how good he'll be in a head coaching role, but those 2 names are pretty interesting. Another name that is not really talked about in this thing is Chad Lunsford, the Georgia Southern head coach. I think that would be an interesting choice to go after him, because they don't run exactly what Georgia Tech runs, which I think everyone in the Georgia Tech community is tired of the triple option, and they just want to totally throw that one out there. I get that, but he runs a very interesting offense that has option to it, but at the same time, in a key 2-minute drive, will get you down the field. So that if I want to throw someone out there, because I feel like this search is pretty much wide open, it's not pretty much a locked-in search of an exclusive search of who you're going to get, because just Georgia Tech in its nature, you're not going to get the hottest coach out there. Let's just be honest. I know that we probably want to see Lane Kiffin or but yeah, let's just be honest. That's not going to happen. But I feel like the guy. I feel like Coach Lunsford would be just an interesting choice, and I feel like he's right now in the right spot to move up, because Georgia Southern has been pretty successful under his tenure, and I don't see why not. They would. I don't see why he wouldn't be successful up here, but at the same time, recruiting is going to be the big key going forward for the next Georgia head coach. If you can deal with the academic pressures and make Georgia Tech an attractive place, then everything will work out for you. But just shifting our attention to the SEC championship, I was trying to find something positive for the Georgia side of things, because right now the national media narrative is that Alabama is going to win. Some people think that Alabama is just totally going to roll on Georgia. Some people think it's going to be close. And I read an article this week in the AJC by Steve Hummer, and it talked about Evander Holyfield, who is the father of Elijah Holyfield, one of the Georgia starting running backs for Georgia. And he talked about the time he fought Mike Tyson back in 1997, which at the time, Mike Tyson looked pretty unstoppable. And Evander Holyfield was the big underdog in that situation. And I feel like that's exactly the scenario that's being played out here. I like how Steve Hummer presented that in the AJC, because I like the fact, too, that his mom told him that you don't want to be fighting just for a reputation. That you can't let the opponent and what he does just mentally wear on you. And I feel like that's a good lesson for the Georgia Bulldogs, because any team can be beat any day, no matter how good they are. And this was the same case with Evander fighting Mike Tyson. As tomorrow, I'm pretty sure everyone's going to have their money on Alabama, and I don't blame you. Like at this fight, they had their money with Mike Tyson. But upsets can happen. And I feel like no matter what happens tomorrow with Georgia, Georgia is heading in the right direction. Because all this turnover that they had with their defense and all the injuries and on the offensive line, I feel like in the long run, maybe it's not going to show up tomorrow, but in the long run, Georgia's in the right position to win championships, to win national championships. Right now, I wouldn't say like they're the next Alabama. Hopefully, they can live up to that. I would say right now they're more like the next Clemson, in my opinion. And but I feel like this game is kind of like the Rose Bowl, that the local media is being a little bit optimistic about it, and the national media is pretty much giving Georgia no shot at all. Even though one of the speaking points is what happens to Alabama in the playoff picture if Georgia beats them, which a lot of people speculate that Alabama's going to be a lock no matter what, and I could see why. But this game is going to mean more for Georgia than it is going to be for Alabama tomorrow, because Georgia's trying to fight their way into the to the playoff, and this is one of these years where I feel like Georgia would probably get a playoff spot automatically. Right now they're sitting at 4, but we all know that could change. So I like how Steve Hummer tied in Evander Holyfield's fight with Mike Tyson. Go check out the article. It's a great read. It'll make you feel optimistic about the game tomorrow. So like I said too, just to put a disclaimer out there, we are recording this on a Friday, and so if you're listening to this on a Saturday, you know what breaking news happened. We're not going to cover all that because this podcast was recorded on a Friday. So we're just trying to get you guys ready for the game, and we'll record one when the day after the game's over. So definitely be able to stay tuned and check out that. So right now we're going to have Bill Bender come on the show and give you his thoughts on this weekend in college football. Well, today I am joined with Bill Bender from SportingNews.com, one of the college football writers for Sporting News. Bill, how are you doing today, man?
Yeah, I'm doing well, Alex. Thanks for having me on. Obviously an exciting week. I think it's been a while since I've talked to you, but I sound a little under the weather. I've been battling a cold all week, so maybe it'll improve my voice.
Well, yeah, you sound just fine on this end, but has it been because of the cold weather recently?
That's called living in Ohio. We're used to it, but yeah, just some things go around this time of year. And after the Big Ten championship game, probably should have wore a warmer coat, I suppose, but the Ohio State-Michigan game rather. But yeah, I know you were anxious to talk, and I'll just kind of let you fire away. Well, I don't know where we're going this weekend, but I'm going to Indy. But it should be a fun weekend.
Well, down here in Atlanta, it's always the SEC championship is the big headliner game. But yeah, let's start up in Big Ten country because I just wanted to get your thoughts with probably the localist school in your area, the Ohio State Buckeyes. Do you feel, one, that Ohio State could possibly make a playoff push? Or two, also, do you feel like the Urban Meyer is going to stay, or is this going to be his last year?
Well, unless his health doesn't allow for it, I do think he'll be the coach next year. There's no reason performance-wise for him to leave. He served the suspension. They won the Big Ten. They're 7-0 against their biggest rival, and they have a ton of talent coming back. So I think the Meyer question is about health, and I can't speculate on another guy's health, although he's said repeatedly he's fine. Second question's a little more complicated because after the Michigan game, I would have said, yeah, they're going to go over Oklahoma, but clearly the committee didn't feel the same way, and I don't know how they can get a bump from playing more Northwestern. It's a little bit different than 14 in that, TCU's not playing Iowa State. Oklahoma's playing Texas, a higher-ranked team, and I don't really care what the scores are unless it's like 70-0, and I don't think that's going to happen. So I think it's going to be hard to bump the Sooners if the Sooners win.
Right. Well, let me ask you then the question that a lot of national media have been asking themselves, and I just want to get your opinion on it. If Georgia somehow wins the SEC championship, where does that put Alabama? Do you feel like Alabama's automatically in no matter what happens this week? Or do you feel like one loss could bump the Crimson Tide out of the playoffs?
The score would matter. It's like a tight, great classic game, like instant classic, because I think by ranking, this is the highest-rated game we've got all year. I'm trying to think if we had a higher-ranking game. No, we can't because Alabama's won. I forget what LSU was ranked when they played. Were they 4? They were 4, I think.
Yes, they were.
So very similar states then, but not in the championship game. So I think if Georgia would win by like 7 or less, it's a pretty good bet that Alabama would still make the playoff. And I'd be okay with that because I think they've been one of the 4 best teams all year. The problem with Oklahoma and Ohio State is they haven't. Ohio State hasn't looked the part. It's almost too little too late with how they looked the part last week, but where was that team against Maryland, Purdue, Nebraska, Minnesota? Most of the Penn State game, really. And Oklahoma, obviously, you know what I'm going to say next, right? Their defense.
Right, so, exactly.
That's why I think Alabama, I think Alabama and Notre Dame are in as of today. So we're basically playing for 2 spots. And, if you believe Clemson's going to lose to Pitt, And you want to call that now, I'll say on Twitter he called it, but I don't see too many people calling that one.
Well, I'm not going to call that one.
Okay.
But I've heard that Alabama and Clemson are the two locks.
Well, I think Notre Dame's a lock, too. I don't
think Notre Dame's a lock?
Yeah, I mean, they went 12-0, and they're ranked in the top 4. I don't know how you slide them out. I know people are getting creative with it, but what's going to happen? Let's play out your scenario that Georgia wins, a close one. So your playoff will end up being Clemson, Georgia, Alabama, Notre Dame. I don't know the order. Probably do a Georgia-Alabama rematch and then let Clemson and Notre Dame play so we get something new in the title game. That's how I think that might play out. So that happens. Then you have 3 conferences left out. You're going to have a couple outcries. You're going to have the outcry for the 18 playoff, which people do anyway. And then you're going to have an outcry for Notre Dame to join a conference, which I think they should do under the current format. But, whether it's the ACC, Big Ten, probably would be the ACC. I think those things should happen. So, and I don't know. I don't know what you think about that, but I just think Notre Dame's in with a win, even though they don't have a 13th data point.
Well, I was going to ask you, what were your thoughts on, because that's interesting you talk about that Notre Dame should join a conference, but I was going to ask you, what are your thoughts on if Notre Dame played a conference championship game this weekend? Would that either help them or hurt them?
Well, it can do either. I mean, it depends. What if they were playing Ohio State for the Big Ten championship? What if they were the ones playing Clemson? I just think it makes more sense. I think they've done their job, and the reason why I think they're a lock to get in is, for example, what does Ohio State have that Notre Dame doesn't? Notre Dame beat Michigan. Notre Dame beat Northwestern. So there's nothing they can really say that has the drop on Ohio State, or Ohio State have the drop on Notre Dame, because Ohio State, what I think another thing we didn't even really talk about was probably going to end up keeping them out is that big loss to Purdue. Again, we're back in that same thing where they had that big loss, and it really hurts their chances. So I don't mind the Irish being in either, because I think they've proved themselves. They're a really good football team. They're not the same team they were in 2012. They're bigger. They have – I'm kind of running through our All-American stuff now.
Right,
they have a lot of guys that are All-American type players.
Now, what do you since you're covering the Big 12 championship game, do you feel like there's any shot for Northwestern to get the upset?
I won't say there's not any shot. It's long odds. I mean, they played – I have to go back and look at the score. I think when they played Ohio State and Columbus a few years ago, the final score was 24-20. And it was tight, and they had a chance to win late, and they were creative. The one thing about Northwestern, they're not going to have a lot of penalties. They're not going to have a lot of turnovers. They do have a quarterback with a long arm, and they're going to be playing with a lot of emotion, because you and I can talk about the value of a conference championship game all you want, but that means a lot to them because they've never been there, and they're going to be fired up.
Right,
and Pat Fitzgerald's going to be fired up, and I think they'll play tight for a half, and then I think I predicted like a 17-point win for Ohio State, and I don't think that'll be enough to, make an impact on the committee.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Now let's shift kind of our focus. How do you feel like the SEC championship game is going to play out?
Tight for the first half. I mean, Georgia's got a running game with 2 running backs, and they have a ball control offense that can make big plays. They're going to score points. It's not going to be – I don't think this is going to be a full-fledged blowout. They obviously know Alabama from a scheme standpoint, and they're one of the few teams that has talent in the neighborhood of Alabama. Nobody in the country has as much talent as Alabama. That's just fact. But Georgia, Clemson, Ohio State, and I would argue LSU are probably the 4 teams that have talent in that neighborhood. So the key on the other side is going to be, can Georgia generate a pass rush? Can they make Tua uncomfortable? Because Alex, I'm going to tell you something. Nobody has done that. Nobody has done that all year. Somebody asked me what Tua's Heisman moment was the other day, and I said they should take a picture of him sitting on the bench drinking Gatorade in the fourth quarter because the job's done. And that's a pretty good Heisman moment to me. So,
right.
But yeah, I mean, to say Georgia doesn't have a chance to win this game, they do. They're in their backyard, as you know, being down there. And
right.
They were in the ring. It's kind of the same thing I say about Clemson and Alabama. They've been in the ring with them, and they've played them close. And now they actually have some film on Tua head-to-head, which nobody else had this year. I think that's very valuable.
Right. Now, let's talk about just coaching changes, because you recently put an article about Mac Brown being the head coach at North Carolina. Do you feel like that's a good move for North Carolina going forward? Because Larry Fedora kind of came in hot and then just kind of fizzled out there.
I think it'll help be a good transition from the Fedora era, because it was bad off the field. I think the last time I talked to you was shortly after Fedora made the CTE comments. They had suspensions. Mm-hmm. They were not good on the field. I believe they went 2-9 on the field this year. So I think with Mac Brown, you get a safe hire. You get a guy I think that's motivated too, because his career didn't end the way he wanted to at Texas. This is a chance for him to get back in the game, prove he can still coach. I think, there are rumors about who he might bring in for coordinator positions, and they're good names. So I think they're going to be fine. I think this is a good hire. I think it's the right hire at the right time for them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just kind of see with college football nowadays, I guess for the power schools that can pretty much get any coach in the nation, it seems like you want to go younger just because of recruiting. And obviously a lot has to go into selecting a head coach, because a lot of guys aren't ready, like Cliff Kingsbury recently. So
yeah, I understand that, but I mean, Les Miles is the same thing in Kansas, proven commodity. To your point, I think the fact that North Carolina didn't go for Scott Satterfield was a little bit interesting. It sounds like Louisville might be going down that road, and I am all about that. I mean, Neil Brown's another guy that would get a better job eventually, but those coaches in turn are also pretty choosy. I mean, the fact that Jeff Brom didn't take the Louisville job ought to tell you how the state of things are there right now. He played there. He loves that university. He's like Louisville's first son. So, I think for you got to give that young coach definitely some leash when they play and coach in those games.
Right. Well, speaking of coaching changes here in Atlanta, a coaching change happened with Paul Johnson announcing his retirement yesterday. Who do you feel like is going to be a good fit in that job?
Well, I saw Tony Elliott's name being mentioned. I think that would be tough to pull him away from Clemson, but he certainly checks a lot of boxes. What they're going to have, regardless of who that guy is I think they need to change away from the triple option. There are too many awesome football players in the state of Georgia that play high school football that don't want to play that offense. Right. And I like, don't get me wrong, I'm not talking down about Paul Johnson. I think he did a fantastic job there. But, when you're at Georgia Tech, you're fighting the ACC recruiting front, you're fighting the Georgia recruiting front, you're fighting a lot of things. So, I think that's one name. There are a couple of others out there, but they need to have somebody that can try to recruit against Kirby, because Kirby's got a heck of a head start in that state.
Right. Now I just want to just kind of end out this conversation. I saw an interesting tweet that you tweeted out, and referring to the conference championship weekend, but you said, hey, what about these matchups right here with, I think it was Alabama against Central Florida, I know Georgia and Oklahoma, and I can't remember. So could you fill in the rest for us? And what was your thought process with sending out that tweet?
Yeah, we have an article up right now about how to fix conference championship weekend. And I think for all the people that are crying for an 18 playoff, it's right in front of us. Just
right.
Just take the top 8 this week. I don't care what their conference affiliation is. I don't care about anything else. If you had Alabama, UCF, Clemson, Michigan, Notre Dame, Ohio State, Georgia, Oklahoma, put that on campus, it'd be better than anything we're going to see this weekend. It'd probably be, and then, take 2 weeks off after that and then play the Bulls as usual. I think that would be the way around it. I just don't think the college football playoff and conference championship weekend mesh well. Of course, it's big for Alabama and Georgia, but Clemson's a 28-point favorite. Ohio State's 15-point favorite. Utah-Washington doesn't really impact the picture at all. So I think you need those things to mesh better, and that's the best way to do it.
Last question. Do you think that everything this weekend's going to either go according to the script or it's going to be total chaos come 12 o'clock Sunday morning?
I think we'll get mostly script. I think Alabama's going to win a close one. I think Oklahoma's going to win by about 10. I think Ohio State's going to blow out Northwestern, but it won't be enough. And Clemson's going to win. So, again, the debate will be Oklahoma or Ohio State. I still think there's a chance for Ohio State to crack that, but at the end of the day, I think it'll be Alabama versus Oklahoma, and then they'll probably move that to the Orange Bowl. And Notre Dame and Clemson down in Jerry World. That's pretty good.
Yeah, that is a good matchup. So, well, thanks for being on the show, Bill. Always enjoy just getting your perspective on what's going on in college football.
Well, I appreciate it. Thanks so much for having me on.
No problem. Now, to end the show, we're just going to bring on Sean McEvoy, and this is a pretty lengthy conversation, so but hey, it's SEC championship weekend, and this is we thought we're gonna spend as much time as we can on the subject talking about the game, and so I think you guys are gonna enjoy this angle that Sean puts on talking about Justin Fields, and actually Sean trained Justin Fields during the summer, so he's had a first-hand look on what Justin Fields can do. I know that you guys are definitely going to enjoy this conversation, and so yeah, here is my conversation with Sean McEvoy. Now we just want to bring on the show a good friend of mine who I developed a relationship with covering games at Roswell High School, and he was involved with me in my last podcast, but we just want to welcome to the ATL box score here on Football Friday a man that speaks football like a second language, and that is Sean McEvoy. Sean, how are you doing today, man?
Hey, Alex, I'm doing great, man. Thanks for having me.
Oh, no problem, no problem. So just explain to the people that don't know what a private quarterback trainer is and what you do and your connections just to local high schools here in the metro Atlanta area and elsewhere.
Yeah, absolutely. So, nothing more than just a quarterback coach, but I guess one that does it for a living, right? So that kind of becomes the difference there in the whole title. But, been coaching high school football for 12 years, off and on from when I was in Philadelphia and now in Georgia. And then for the last 16, 17 years, doing quarterback training as well. And the last 5 or 6 doing quarterback training exclusively. So just working with quarterbacks from youth to high school and college up through the NFL on, their development. So depending on what stage you're getting the quarterback at and fine-tuning their skills, giving them an opportunity to maximize their potential and hopefully play at the highest level possible. So I run a company called Quarterback Takeover with Quincy Avery.
Nice.
We do a lot of group and private training within that. And then this past season, joined Buford High School as the quarterback coach there at Buford in Georgia as well.
So I don't have any kids, but if my 7-year-old had an arm, or if my 7-year-old threw a perfect spiral, should I hook him up with you?
Yeah, absolutely. Or if your 7-year-old doesn't throw a perfect spiral, right, we can help him there too. So, no, absolutely. At all ages, as long as the athlete, loves what he's doing and wants to be better and reach whatever potential he has, as long as he's going to come with the work ethic, then obviously I'm happy to work with him and help him succeed.
Gotcha. And yeah, right before we came on, I remember you talking about that it feels weird not getting ready for a game because your season just pretty much ended.
Yeah, we lost last Friday night in the quarterfinals.
Oh, man.
So tough one. Always hard to recover after a tough loss. And
that was really surprising
to me. Around here, it's Friday night, and everybody else is getting ready to get on the field tonight. It's even more tough.
Well, there's not a lot of teams getting on the field, so hopefully that makes you feel better.
Yeah, there's elite few. If you're in the semifinals at this point, you're down to the obviously final 4 teams in each of the classifications. So, heck of a season for all the teams playing tonight.
It's crazy just how, because pretty much right now, just in football in general, if your NFL team's doing well, then you're probably paying attention. But this is when a lot of people kind of turn off from football, especially I could see depending on what your NFL team is doing. But it's crazy that you have the SEC championship and a lot of college football news going on this past week. And also on top of that, the high school football state semifinals here in the state of Georgia is going on. I remember you saying in Tennessee they're actually playing state championship games tonight. Am I right on that?
That's correct. Yeah. So no, you're right. I think a really exciting time of year as you head into games that matter more than any of the games played earlier in the year at all the levels, right? Mm-hmm. No, I think it's a great time of year to be a football fan.
Right. No, yeah, let's just get into it because I think I'm going to, at the end there, ask you kind of a Matt Ryan question, but it seems like this weekend the NFL kind of takes a backseat to college football, at least in this market. Probably up in New England, it's a little bit different story, but at least in this market, college football kind of takes a back seat, and this is kind of this conversation is going to be pretty much focused on college football. And I just want to get right into the McKenzie Milton injury that he suffered against South Florida last Friday actually, and I just want to know from you. What is it like? Because you've seen a lot of quarterbacks, and I'm pretty sure you've seen similar injuries happen to quarterbacks. And what is that like? Because McKenzie Milton was the the poster boy for that particular program, and now it looks like he has injuries that's going to set him back, getting ready for the draft. So. What's that like, and how do you kind of get a mindset going forward in figuring out the rest of your career?
Yeah. It is. It's for Milton himself, obviously, was a guy that had the potential to enter the draft this year. Luckily for him, he has the extra year of eligibility. So in this case, I think that's going to really serve him well as he rehabs. But, the extent of the damage, and you're still starting to understand how bad it was, but they're talking about loss of blood flow, they're talking about nerve damage, and a full knee reconstruction that needs to be done. and a surgery still to be determined on when they're going to do that. And, that type of an extensive injury, you imagine it's going to be a pretty long rehab. So, the question is going to be, first and foremost, just how back to 100% they can get them and in what time period. It certainly doesn't seem like the kind of injury where, he's going to be ready for week one. He's certainly not going to be at spring ball or early in fall camp, you wouldn't think. So that's going to be tough. And then once he's back healthy enough and cleared to play, then your concern is kind of mentally where he's at, just from the missed mental reps of not having all the off-season time to work on his development and to, get the plays in practice through the spring and the fall. But, now are you a little bit more sensitive to your knee? Are you worried about possibly re-injuring it? How much trust do you have in your ability to, make the plays with his feet, which is obviously a big part of what McKenzie Milton does as well. So it's tough. I mean, obviously everybody's rooting for him. He's been a dynamic player. All the success they've had there at UCF has been tremendous. And, he's kind of the heart and soul of that team. So, for Milton, I think we're all kind of hoping for the best, but he's got a long road. And then if you're UCF, you lose your leader, right? You still got a lot to play for. You got your conference championship game against Memphis coming up, and you're still trying to go for your 25 straight games in a row, and another undefeated regular season, and everything they've been putting together there in that program. So we'll see. I'll be interested to keep an eye. What I liked is the way they responded after Milton got hurt at USF, right? I mean, it was early in the second quarter, and Darryl Mack came in, their freshman, and played really well and won the game. And now, with a whole week to prepare for Memphis, be interesting to see kind of how he plays and then how the team rallies around him.
Mm-hmm. I just want to know what it's like to be either an offensive coordinator, quarterback coach, because you pretty much have your guy like McKenzie Milton in this case. And I did kind of goof. I thought he was a senior for some reason, but I did look it up, and he is a junior. You're right about that. But I just want to know, just from a coordinator's perspective, you knew you weren't going to play the freshman at all, and now you need him in a conference game to kind of finish what you started here. What's the how do you get that kid ready?
Yeah, and the issue is, what was your plan? What was your strategy kind of the whole season leading up to this point, right? If you didn't have one, then you'd be hard pressed to do something in a week that's going to make a big difference here. Even though he was a freshman, he was the backup. So you got to imagine there was, some sense of a game plan that you had with him week to week. He was getting, you think, reps, if not with the first team, obviously taking a load of the second team reps and things of that nature. But I think good offensive coordinators, good head coaches always have a plan for this, right?
Right.
Because at any point, week 1, week 4, week 7, in the first quarter, first play, your quarterback could roll an ankle and, be out for a quarter. So you always kind of have a mindset of, okay, what are the things that each one of my quarterbacks do well? And, I think the really good offensive coordinators have a 8 to 10 play script almost, whether it's written down or in their head on, okay, if I have to go to, Bobby here for, 6 plays in the second quarter, what are 6 that we can be successful? And it seems like, in just looking at the way Mac played going into that game at South Florida, that the OC has a really good idea of what he does well. And I expect more of the same this week, just, working to his strengths, probably limiting the offense a little bit. I'm sure it's a lot more called from the OC and less checks and things at the line of scrimmage, things you would let a senior quarterback or, in this case, a redshirt junior quarterback handle. Now with somebody with less experience, he's just more going in there to execute the plays. You probably take more off his plate and let him rely more on the athletes around him.
Now let me ask you this, because you kind of piqued my curiosity here. Is it sometime either in spring ball or fall camp where, because obviously with a program like UCF, McKenzie Milton was their offense, so to speak. Yeah, he had a lot of talent around him and everything like that. But do you, as coaches, do you ever consider a doomsday scenario, and do you ever like run through what that would look like either in fall camp or in spring ball?
Oh yeah, no doubt. I mean, I think it has to be something that you concern yourself with. I mean, like I said, it starts with, hey, if his helmet gets knocked off, he's got to come out for one play, right? So we're going to need to put our backup in, and if it's 3rd and 9, we can't just hand the ball off and punt, you know what I mean? So you start that. Then it becomes, hey, what if he rolls his ankle and he just needs to be out for a quarter? And then you look at, okay, what if he has a, season-ending injury? I think all those scenarios have to be part of the process of your game plan. You have to be prepared for these moments. They're too difficult to try to react to after the fact. So in the same way that you got your, second-string left tackle ready to go, and you get him reps all week because he may need to play, I think it's no different at quarterback. Now, what changes is, like I mentioned earlier, with the guys at different skill sets, right? I mean, think about a pocket passing quarterback as your starter and a dual threat running type guy as your backup, right? You're talking about two distinctly different offenses potentially that you have to be prepared to run if you have to make that move at quarterback.
Interesting. There's a whole lot more other questions I want to get into about this because this is so interesting, but I'm not going to go down that road because I don't want to bore my audience. Or if you're not like totally football centric, then this conversation might bore you. But we have to move on, and let's kind of shift our focus down here in Atlanta. The building behind me, Mercedes-Benz Stadium. You're going to have the SEC championship tomorrow because we are recording this on a Friday. So wherever you're listening to this was a conversation that was recorded on a Friday. So I don't know if any breaking news is going to happen or anything like that. But anyways, I just want to know because I had Bill Bender on my show, a sports writer for sportingnews.com. And he mentioned that Tua's Heisman moment was pretty much a picture of him just sitting on the bench in the fourth quarter. Because that's how dominant Alabama has been this year. So with that being said, what's the thing that makes Tua just so good? Is it the fact that he fits into that system well, or is it that he just has a great supporting cast and he's the guy that's taking advantage of it and he has a extremely inaccurate arm?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely a combination of all those things. Let's start with just himself as a quarterback. He's incredibly talented, for how young he is and still kind of how inexperienced he is.
Right, he's the right size too.
Yeah, exactly right. So he is obviously a incredible talent. He throws the ball extremely well. Very accurate, makes great decisions, which I think is, why they've had so much success. I mean, so few interceptions this year, seems to be making the right, the right reads and going to the right places with the football and just protecting the football. When you're a good team and you have a lot of great talent, protecting the football and just executing the way you're supposed to execute is really the path to win games. So I imagine that, a person with his talent, his ability, because I think he's the best quarterback in college football. I think he's going to be successful no matter where he's at. Mm-hmm. Now, that being said, the Alabama system is what it is. It's why Alabama's had so much success with, much less capable quarterbacks in the past, because there is so much talent, because they can run the football and they play great defense and, they have so many other weapons outside of the quarterback himself that's a team that, with a lot, not as talented quarterbacks is still going to be super successful. So now you got this kind of perfect storm of great system, great team with great athletes and great coaching, plus, maybe the best quarterback in college football, maybe the best quarterback we've seen college football in a few years. It'll be interesting to see how his career develops. I think he's that guy. He's got a shot to be as good as anyone we've seen.
Now that you said that, as a coach and someone that evaluates quarterbacks on a daily basis, what's one of the things or one thing that that you feel like he needs to get better at to be a good NFL quarterback at the next level?
So that's going to be the most interesting thing, is how he transitions, how he develops, because all the things we talked about, he is a little bit undersized. He moves well, but we know that ability to make plays with your feet seems to have less and less success at the next level as it does in college football. He might be as talented as you get in college football, and he still may not be one of the top draft picks by the time he goes to the NFL. That'll be really interesting to see how that all plays out and how they evaluate him. I think he needs to continue to develop as a passer. Like I told you, I'm very high on the way he throws the football, but, to transition to the next level, you're going to have a lot more 3rd and 9s than he faces now in Alabama.
Is
right?
it throwing into tighter windows?
Well, that's exactly right. The competition is going to continue to stiffen, although they're going to play a great defense in Georgia, and they've played some really good ones already this year, and, in LSU and, Auburn's defense and things of that nature. So he's played really good talent. But now you're talking about all 11 on the field being that high caliber. But I think it's just a matter of, really tightening up his accuracy and forcing. I think he's had a lot of success this year, and not to take anything away from him, but when you're running the ball as consistently as they're running the football, it sets up a lot of, play action opportunities for him in the pass game. You can go and watch an Alabama game and not feel like there was a throw he had to make, or a really tough, throw, at many points throughout the year. Now, that being said, he was extremely accurate, and, it's hard to knock a quarterback who's had the success he's had. But that'll be the difference, is he'll have to be able to be relied upon solely, which they haven't really had to do this year so far.
Right. And are you curious at all to see what happens when he loses some of his receiving core, or he loses a couple offensive line, to see how he'll react with some of the team aspects being stripped away from him that he didn't have before?
Yeah, I think that, that's just with any quarterback, that, the less weapons he has are really experienced weapons, right? Guys you can truly rely on and know they're going to get the job done. But it's just, once again, the reality of Alabama, and it's where Georgia's gotten themselves now too, is the way the recruiting class is. They're going to have guys that come up every year who are every bit as good as the guys that just graduated the year prior, right? So I don't think that's going to be a big difference as he moves on through the years.
Why do you think his interception rate is so low?
Yeah, I think it was just what I was saying earlier, was that he hasn't had to force balls into tough spots. I think they've been, able to keep defenses off balance enough with the run game, just their sheer dominance, that I think when he drops back to pass, he's looking for wide open guys, or he's not throwing the football. Now if you're facing 3rd and 8 every series, and you have to make those tough throws just to keep the chains moving, I think you have to be a little bit more aggressive in the pass game. From what I've seen from Alabama this year, they just haven't had to be as risky in the pass game. And to his credit, he knows that, and he hasn't been trying to pull off, all these great throws. And not that he's not capable of it. But if you don't have to do it, you can be successful. Other way, you can throw the ball away on 2nd down and come back and get the 1st down by running on 3rd down. You kind of have to measure risk reward there, and he's done a good job of that, protecting the football.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's go to the other side of the ball and talk about Georgia's offense. There hasn't really been any inefficiencies all season. The only thing they've had to deal with is just kind of something I think will probably help him out in years to come, but this year it was a little bit of a struggle that they've had so many offensive line injuries. But I just want to know from you, Sean, going up against this Alabama front seven, what do you think Jim Cheney is going to do, especially trying to attack this Alabama defensive line? Because watching the LSU game, they pretty much just manhandled LSU.
Yeah, I mean, that's going to be the number one concern. Now, all year, Georgia's run the ball extremely effectively. Obviously, what they're doing with Swift and Holyfield and that combination, and it's crazy to say, but I don't think they've taken a step back at all, at running back, even with the guys they've graduated out the last couple of years. So, that ability to run the ball effectively, especially to get to the edge, I think is what they need to be able to do in order to make things easier for Fromm. So combined with that, it's also continuing to keep that Alabama defense off balance, right? So if you can run the ball well and set up play action opportunities for Fromm to make big plays down the field, that certainly opens up some space. Then, throwing on running downs, you may be coming out and throwing in those second and shorts and throwing in the 1st and 10s and things of that nature. Fromm's going to have to be effective doing that. But if they're able to kind of keep it mixed up and get the Alabama defense having to think a little bit, that's where I think Georgia can be dangerous. And they have certainly a talented enough quarterback in Fromm and certainly good enough running backs to be able to do that.
Now, let me ask you about this scenario, and I think this has been on the minds of a lot of Georgia people in general. With Alabama's had a history of losing big games to mobile quarterbacks like Johnny Manziel, Deshaun Watson. Georgia has that type of quarterback, but he's very, very young. And is a young man that you've actually had a couple training sessions with. But I wanted to know if you're in Jim Cheney's shoes, how do you manage this quarterback situation? Because it seemed like at Georgia Tech, because Fromm had the hot hand during the Tech game, granted it's Tech, but it seems like they kept him in there, and it seemed like the same thing they did during the Florida game as well. That's why you didn't see Fields on the field at all, was because Fromm was having the hot hand, and you didn't want to interrupt that. But I just want to know from you, how do you handle this situation, having a talented quarterback like Fields and a established starter like Fromm?
Yeah, first of all, I want to say that Georgia, I think, has handled that situation very well. I think they've done a good job of continuing to, give Fromm the amount of reps that he's gotten to continue to improve throughout the year and playing at a higher level, it seems, week in, week out as we move forward. I think Fromm's playing, obviously at this point, as well as he's ever played, which is all you can ask for, of your leader and your quarterback. That being said, I think Justin Fields, they've got on the field a lot, maybe not as early in Georgia Tech or as much in, Florida, but, they certainly found the opportunities throughout the season to have him play significant times, in kind of meaningful drives too, right? Early in the second quarter and coming in and playing for extended time in second halves of games they were up big. I think they've really done a good job of getting him the experience that potentially now makes you feel more comfortable playing him in a big situation. And I think, and this is what I think what you're alluding to, is I think they need him in a game that they're going to play tomorrow against Alabama. I just think it's a weapon that you have to at least make Alabama prepare for and defend, on the field. So that some of the keys to UGA's offense that we just talked about, I think, are things that Justin Fields really does well, allows you to do. The idea of helping to get the run game established and expand. Anytime you can have a dual threat quarterback in there in the run game, it gives you a man advantage. It makes the defense account for the quarterback in the scheme. And, so it takes a little of the pressure off that offensive line and only the running backs to still be able to establish the run. And because Justin can make plays with his feet, that in itself keeps the defense off balance. It allows you to, give a run look, and Justin's certainly capable of throwing the ball effectively enough. So all those same type of play action opportunities that we talked about as being a key with Fromm, I think serve just as well with Justin. But the last piece, and this is where UGA has struggled all year, has been down in the red zone, especially inside the 10. That's where I think, you've seen it a little bit, right? You saw Georgia playing around with the last few weeks of using Justin Fields in, I guess, like a wildcat type package. But obviously he also gives you the ability to throw the football down there as well. I think that's a key piece.
He did it against UMass
for Georgia. Yeah, I think that that could be the difference. Because one thing that we know is going to happen is it's going to be a high scoring game if Georgia is competitive.
Right.
Alabama's going to get their 30, 35 points, and if that's the case, then they're going to have to make sure they're getting touchdowns when they get inside the red zone and not settling for field goals. And I think Justin Fields could be the key to that.
Yeah, I was going to ask, my next question I was going to ask you is about if you're going to play Justin Fields, where do you play him on the field? Are you going to just use him in red zone type of things, or are you going to let him take over drives that start at the 30?
That's difficult, and this is the hardest decision that these coaches have to make who have two really talented quarterbacks is, how do you make sure that your starting quarterback and the guy that you think handles the role and the reason he's QB1 and from, he has to be able to stay in a rhythm and stay in a flow. You have to give him those opportunities to not get thrown out of what he does well. That being said, I think to limit yourself on how much you use Justin Fields could, be something that hurts you down the road as well. I think it'll be very interesting. I think it starts with, package stuff, maybe short yardage or goal line. But then, depending on how the game plays out, if you feel like you're not running the ball well enough, I think you got to consider going to Justin Fields there. If you feel like, they're being able to get great pressure on kind of an immobile quarterback and they're moving from off his spot. And, similar to what Auburn did the first time around last year where, they were able to heat him up quickly, and his inability to get out of the pocket and make plays kind of off schedule, I think really affected them. That being said, they make a good adjustment 2 weeks later, right? But, that those could be another opportunity where Justin Fields can give him some success. It'll be a really interesting, just the way Nick Saban did last year,
right?
Trying to decide at what point do you make a move and do you give the other quarterback an opportunity. I think that could be potentially one that Kirby Smart's faced with tomorrow.
Really,
So let me so not to pull from and only play Justin. I didn't mean to imply that.
Gotcha.
I meant how much, because I think that you go in with a game plan of, okay, maybe we have this package for Justin in the red zone, but Fromm's our guy for the other, 70 offensive plays of the game.
Right.
If things don't go the way you want and you're not feeling the success that you kind of have planned happening, that's when you have to decide, is it now 50 plays to 20 plays, right? Do you start changing things up a little bit? I think you have to be able to adjust. I don't see a situation where Jake Fromm, gets benched in favor of Justin Fields, but I do think you find the spots to play Fields enough to, give you the outcome you're looking for.
Now let me ask you this. If, say this game goes down like it went down the last time it happened in 2012, where it pretty much went back and forth, and Georgia had the ball last, and they were trying to drive down the field and score. I'm talking about the Aaron Murray trying to throw it to Malcolm Mitchell and Chris Conley catching it on the 5-yard line. I'm talking about that play.
Sure.
So say Georgia's in a situation like that before. Who do you put in the game in that situation? Do you put Fromm in to get you that quick score to win the game, or do you put Fields in, or do you put Fields in a goal line situation or in a red zone type of situation?
I think regardless of what time it is in the game or what the specific situation is, I think you have to, you come into the game with your best plan in each of these scenarios. So, this is where I think some coaches get scared away from things, especially if, so we go into the game tomorrow, and I think Justin Fields in some kind of wildcat package down inside the 10 is our best formation for that. And if you're running on first down and it gets dropped for a loss, it doesn't not become still your best formation, right? You game planned all week. You can't let one, maybe lack of success or one bad play force you out of something you thought was going to be helpful. So that'll be interesting. So if it gets to that last moment in the fourth quarter, if you felt like that was your best stuff going in, I think you gotta hang with that a little bit. But anything towards the end, Jake Fromm's your guy. Like, he's your leader. He's done it before. He's played in big games. He did it in the semifinals last year. You have to give him the opportunity to make those plays himself. So I don't see a situation down the stretch, unless, like I said, it's that goal line and you got to go to what you feel like is your best goal line stuff.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Let me ask you this question. Since we've pretty much established Fields is going to play, and I don't know, this is maybe as a casual observer of the game, just from a fan's perspective, I just want to know, does it help at all that, because I know usually when you put your backup in or a player like Fields, that you're trying to get some sort of spark offensively. Yeah. But does it help at all that you have your starting quarterback on like the third drive, let's say, on the bench with the headset on? Does it help him see the defense at all, or does any of that, him not playing in a couple of series, help with reading defenses?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think you need the extra time, right? I mean, you're having time in between each drive where you get a chance to talk to your OC, talk to Cheney in the booth through a headset or whatever, or talk to Jesse Stone on the sideline, or in this case, I guess James Coley, handling quarterbacks now, and so you have that opportunity to talk with those guys. I don't think you need a series out to be able to kind of regroup and get better information than you had before. That being said, it depends on what the perceived issue is. I mean, if you have a guy who's just struggling, right? He's 1 for 8. Maybe you just wonder about it being a mental thing, and maybe you feel like, okay, let's just give him out and take a breath. Let's try and get a little spark with Fields and just kind of get him to settle back down. Now, like I said, I don't foresee that being an issue. He's playing a lot of really, really competitive, tough environments, tough games. I don't foresee him being a guy that needs to step back and take a breath. But that would be the only scenario where I think like time could be beneficial.
Gotcha. Because you're seeing the game in a whole different way than I will ever see it. So like I said, it's not even that I'd be shocked if I watch the game tomorrow and Justin Fields doesn't take a step onto the field. Okay.
You know what I mean? Like, that wouldn't shock me, but if you're asking me, like, what kind of how I see Georgia's path to victory, I think it has to include him in the game plan.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. No, you trained with Justin Fields.
Yeah. Spent a little time with him this past off season.
Just give us, just give us, what do you think of his demeanor and maturity? Do you feel like he's ready for a big game like tomorrow?
Yeah, I do. I really do. And this is why I continue to give credit to the way they've developed him this year. I think they've gotten him out there, got him through those early game jitters or playing college football at a big time level for the first time. They've done a good job, and because of how successful Georgia's been, they've been in enough big upset wins where he's gotten to play. I think at this point, with the amount of time he's played, plus all the success he had as a high school quarterback as well, I think he's ready. I don't think the moment's too big for him. I've always been struck with how mature he seemed to be for a young guy. And I think you're seeing it, right? You're seeing it with Trevor Lawrence. You're seeing it, obviously, with Justin and Jake Fromm and Jacob Eason, right? And all these guys who play at such a high level, and as freshmen. And Justin Fields is another one just cut from that cloth. I don't think a concern about how young he is factors into whatever they decide to do with him tomorrow.
Mm-hmm. No, I think we pretty much covered the SEC championship, but another one of your guys that's going to be playing in a big game tomorrow is Dwayne Haskins. How do you feel about his development this year, and how do you feel about the way he's played and performed at Ohio State?
Yeah, I thought he has truly been exceptional all season. We talked a little bit, when we were down in Miami and Dwayne was out there. It was the first time back in, I guess, March, spring break of last year where I met Dwayne for the first time. He's been working with Quincy Avery. Like I said, my partner. He's been working with Quincy for years now. And since that point, I saw Dwayne probably 5 or 6 times in the off season and training together. I thought he was the best quarterback I've ever seen throw the football live.
Wow.
Right. So
wow.
That's something I've always said about him from that time in March. Being around a lot of really good college and NFL quarterbacks, I just think he's built for what Ohio State and what wings in the Big Ten. Mm-hmm. Just a guy who's mobile enough. Think of like a Ben Roethlisberger, right? Can move if he has to, but a guy who's going to be able to stay in the pocket and make every single throw. And that's what you've seen him do. I mean, the number of consecutive 400-yard passing games he's had, the number of 5 and 6 touchdown pass games he had. He just, pretty much broke every Ohio State passing record already this year. He's approaching Big Ten records. He just won Big Ten Quarterback of the Year, Big Ten Offensive Player of the Year, and has, his team with an opportunity now to, hopefully win big enough at Northwestern to get themselves into the playoff.
Mm-hmm. Now, I know you probably haven't talked to this kid at all, but Mr. Yates down at Milton is one of your kids that you trained, and obviously the past couple of days have been pretty interesting because he's committed to Georgia Tech, and now that Paul Johnson is moving on, where do you feel like a recruit like Mr. Yates with this coaching change? Do you feel like he's going to see what other options are out there, or he's excited to see what happens at Georgia Tech? Just not necessarily, don't give me what he's probably thinking, but what do you think a lot of guys are thinking in this type of situation? Because I don't want to throw a high school kid under the bus.
No, I appreciate that, of course. No, and I think that's right. I think, first of all, for him specifically, I think you fixed that program really well, and would have fit Paul Johnson's system extremely well as well, and probably giving them more of a passing option than they've ever had, maybe going back to Joe Hamilton, right? Mm-hmm. So there was some real excitement about that thought of how he could help evolve and maybe open up that Georgia Tech offense a little bit. And no shot at Tiquan Marshall, because he's had a ton of success throwing the football as well, and has been able to expand that. But I think, a guy like Jordan really would have been able to give them an opportunity. So that being said, his skill set fit that really well. But as a quarterback, it was always the issue Georgia Tech had recruiting was how do you find a real top-level guy who both fits that system and kind of wants to play in that system, right? You've seen it through the years where Georgia Tech has had offers out to some of the big name quarterbacks in the area throughout Georgia. But it seems like when other schools, other big D1, other Power 5 teams would come in, they would consistently pull the quarterbacks away from Georgia Tech. And the reality there was just, if I can go and throw the ball 25 times a game as opposed to running triple option, and maybe taking a beating a little bit, it seems like guys are drawn to that more wide open system.
But
so it'd be interesting now. So if you like Georgia Tech for all the reasons, a phenomenal, obviously, academic school for a Georgia kid, an opportunity to stay close to home and play in Georgia, I think that makes a lot of sense. So if anything, you're looking at a coach coming in who now does open up the offense, right?
Right.
So maybe a kid a year or 2 years, 3 years ago that was liking the idea of Georgia Tech until they got a better offer to go play at, wherever, Cincinnati or Virginia Tech, or, now they don't have to go anywhere else. They can stay here and all the things they got from Georgia Tech. And now with a coach potentially coming in and running a different offense, I think that could be the difference for Georgia Tech in getting, higher caliber quarterback recruits each year.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Now, whoever gets hired, Ken Wisenhunt, whoever in that situation, do you think that they're going to talk to Jordan Yates, that's going to be probably their first visit to keep his recruitment?
Yeah, I think it has to be. The cool thing for Jordan is he's one of those guys we talked about earlier playing in a state semifinal tonight, and he's got his team at Milton there doing a lot of great things this year, and they've had a ton of success. They go down and play at, they're home, actually. They're playing over locally at another high school near Milton, but
Denmark High School.
Home game tonight. What's that? Yeah,
Denmark High School.
Yeah.
The only
That's
reason why I know that is because my brother teaches into one of the feeder middle schools into that high school.
Oh, okay.
So
okay. Yeah, exactly.
that's the only reason. That's the only reason why I know it's at Denmark High School.
Yeah. So that should be a good one as they host Lowndes. Now, obviously, Lowndes is the team that beat Grayson, another big time school here in Georgia. But Jordan's had a lot to focus on just preparing for this game tonight. He's been having a nice welcome distraction, I think, from all the Georgia Tech stuff. But you see anything that Georgia Tech liked when they offered him originally has only been proven more right with the way Jordan's played on the field this season. So I got to imagine that continuing, regardless of who the coach is, making sure that you continue to hold on to a guy like Jordan Yates is got to be at the top of the list.
Right, yeah. It seems like he can run any type of system except probably 5-step dropbacks.
Yeah. I mean, they quarterback run quite a bit at Milton, but that's a pretty wide open spread offense, and they do a lot of really creative things in the passing game, and they've done a nice job of utilizing and showcasing Jordan Yates' skills, but I think extremely helped his development to the next level. I think he's going to translate very well.
Well, I don't think the Roswell people, because I'm an alumni of Roswell High School, are going to like the fact that I've been talking about Milton quarterback, but I just want to just get your I just want to see if you could talk to Matt Ryan right now. If Matt Ryan randomly called you up, because since you're such a expert on quarterbacks and offense and everything like that, what advice would you give him? Because the problems with the Falcons this year, it hasn't been the quarterback, but the quarterback's the easy scapegoat to blame when your team's not playing up to its expectations. What is it like for a quarterback to be in that type of situation where everything you're doing is going right, but it's just the defense can't stop anyone?
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, it's frustrating. Yeah, and just the nature of football, there's no amount of individual success that makes up for the fact that you guys are losing, on Sundays.
Right.
And obviously Matt Ryan as a veteran quarterback, knows that. He's been through it. He's been through the up and downs, and years where the team has played well maybe even when he hasn't been at his best in different games, and then seasons like this one, unfortunately, where he's probably playing better than he did his MVP year, and you're just not getting the wings to show for it. So it's not anything that Matt Ryan needs to hear from me. He already knows it, but it's just continuing to be the leader for that football team. It's just the way they are kind of transitioning through with, you wonder, did we miss some of the prime of some of our best athletes? And now we got some younger guys, that really look like they have some potential, and maybe you're just caught right in the middle of it. But just continuing to be the guy who makes sure that team rallies around them, prepares each week the way they need to get better results on Sunday, and keep that group together. I think it's one of the things I think Matt Ryan has always shown an ability to do is be level-headed and consistently composed, handles himself well in the media and things of that nature. He's kind of the guy that you want to get your team through this kind of rocky moment.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you, Sean, for just giving us. I'm pretty sure a lot of people came into this conversation not knowing that much, and we walked out knowing a whole lot more about football than I think we'll ever learn in a lifetime. So thanks for being on the show. Enjoy having a Friday night again to yourself and to your family.
Yeah, and I think I'm going to Denmark. I'm going to watch Jordan play today in that Milton Lounge game. So I'll still be a chance to see some football. Just won't be on the sideline for it.
Gotcha. Hey, I mean, but this is just Sean. I mean, he has a chance to do whatever tonight, and he wants to watch football. So more power to you.
There you go. Got to support the guys. So that's always fun this time of year. Before
I forget, I almost forgot before I let you go, where can we reach you on social media, especially, like I said, if there's someone that has a 7-year-old that can throw a perfect spiral and they want to know more about what you do, or maybe just have quarterback questions themselves, where can we reach you at social media?
Yeah, so Twitter and Instagram are the two that, I never seem to get away from. So QB Coach McEvoy, at both Twitter and Instagram. And like I said earlier, quarterback takeover is kind of the one you want to keep an eye out for, especially if you're seeking quarterback development, quarterback training, quarterback instruction. You can find us there.
All right. Well, thanks for being on the show today, Sean.
Of course, man. Good talking to you, Alex.
Now we just want to thank Sean McEvoy and Bill Bender for coming on the show today. Really appreciate them coming on this episode where we launch the ATL Box Score podcast. And thank you guys for checking us out. If you want to learn more about the ATL Box Score or want to know what we're all about, follow us on social media, because we are on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram is coming, so be sure to look out for that. But we couldn't do this without you guys, and again, we appreciate you listening to this particular episode, and but we need your help. And wherever you see the ATL Box Score podcast, just be sure to hit that like button, because that like button goes a whole lot further in this internet world than I think a lot of people realize also too. If we want to hear your opinions here at the ATL Box Score, we want to hear your opinions. I said that right. So yeah, just be sure to put in the comment section what you thought about the show, or just your opinions on the different things that we talked about, from quarterback and football strategy to this weekend, the different games with Ohio State, Georgia, Alabama, UCF, the Texas and Oklahoma playing again. So be sure to put that in the comment section. Also, too, we want to know from you, do you think Notre Dame is a lock in the college football playoff? Also, too, what do you think Georgia's chances are beating the Crimson Tide and spoiling the whole playoff picture in college football? So be sure to put that in the comment section, because we definitely want to hear from you guys. Thanks again for listening to us, especially if you are listening to this part. I hope that we got your Atlanta sports fix for you. And be sure to check us out on social media. Thanks to Steve Choi for hooking us up here at 260 Peachtree with the Regis company and the Regis brand. And I'm sitting in a very, very nice makeshift studio that has a very nice view of Mercedes-Benz Stadium. We are going to try to live stream that for you someday, hopefully in the near future. So again, we appreciate you guys supporting the ATL Box Score. I'm Alex Berger. I hope that you have a great weekend. Take care of each other out there. And episode 6 of the ATL Box Score is out. Go Dogs!